Welcome everybody. My name is Jeff Green. I am the president of Green Team Realty. Thank you for joining us for the May 2019 housing market update. Let's jump right in and check out the stats, and then we'll open it up to our panel to discuss what's really going on out there. So we're going to take a look from a national standpoint first. Just pure number of home sales taking place in the United States of America. Always great to look at these numbers, very important. Dark blue is current year, light blue is previous year. You know, where we were and where we are, always important, right? We were higher in January, February, and March of 2018 than we are nationally in 2019. Not drastically lower, but nonetheless lower. It's important to note. Next slide. Let's take a look at percentages by region. Also very important to know, right? Because the United States is a massive area from a geographical standpoint, but also from a population standpoint. Some regions are doing better than others. Take a look. The Northeast is, you know, I guess declining by the lowest level of all of the 5 regions of the U.S. Excuse me, the 4 regions of the U.S. On average, 5.4% decline in pure number of sales, not necessarily sales volume or price, but the number of units sold. So I think that that's, you know, good to know. This is interesting over here, how you see the decline in the number of homes and their price categories, right? So 0 to 100 is way down, but I think that's because prices are rising. There just are fewer and fewer homes worth less than $100,000 in the United States of America. So that's what's going on there. But I think the real story to tell is the high end. And, you know, if you follow the industry news and you read things, you'll hear that the high end is under siege. It's losing traction faster than the middle, you know, of the market properties. So I think that that's consistent with what you're hearing and seeing from the troops on the ground out there. Existing home prices are up. Which is consistent. You know, price lags activity always. So I think we're going to continue to see price increases for some time here. This is an interesting quote here from Dean Baker, senior economist at Center for Economic and Policy Research. To sum up the general picture, the U.S. economy is definitely weakening. Again, it's not as strong as it was. However, with wage growth at a respectable pace and job growth remaining healthy, we should see enough consumption demand to keep the economy moving forward. That means slower growth, but no recession. So that's good news. I think we can all handle that, right? The economy's been really zooming. And if we can have it at a good level, everybody can live with that. So that's a good thing. Months of inventory, homes for sale. This is, you know, months of inventory means how many months would it take to clear the current inventory that's on hand at the current rate of sale, okay? And if you look all the way back to 2011, it was way up, and now you can see it's much further down. But I think the headline of this is that inventory actually rose from 17 and 18 to where we are now in 2019. Now, does that mean that more sellers are actually putting their homes on the market because prices have risen, or does it mean that fewer and fewer buyers are buying homes, so there's just more inventory sitting on the market? It's probably a little bit of one and the same, combination of both, if you will. Mortgage rates, still historically low. You know, where are they going in 2019? These are just estimates by groups of people that put projections out there. 4.2%, 4.3% through Q4 of 2019. Those are great rates historically. There's nothing scary about that. A lot of people can afford those rates, so that's a good thing. This is interesting. Percentage of median income needed to purchase the median priced home. This is a really good one, right? Because this shows affordability. So it means that wage growth is increasing, because obviously the price of homes hasn't decreased, but yet the percentage of what one needs of their income to purchase a median priced home has gone down in today's market as opposed to 2006 and 1985 through 2000. So that's a good stat too. It shows that homes are still relatively affordable historically to the average American, which is important, right? Because it's the American dream, right? We want people to own their home. Very important for the health of any economy around the globe. So recession or market slowdown. During the last series of recessions, prices didn't necessarily crash. What happened in 2008 was kind of an anomaly. And that's really, I've been looking at this slide quite a bit just to keep my own sanity, because I was, as a real estate professional, was kind of birthed into that downturn from 2008 through 2016, essentially. And let me tell you, it was no fun going through it. But it's nice to see that it really truly was an anomaly. And I mean, everybody, at the time was who's been around a long time had been saying that. But at the end of the day, when you're a newer real estate professional, it's sometimes hard to hear the good wisdom when there's a lot of noise around you. But anyway, yeah, just because maybe an economy is going into a recession doesn't mean that the housing market is going to crash, so to speak. I think the major recession that we had was due to the housing market. And we're going to talk with PJ Keelan from Family First Funding. He brought some interesting information, and then we're going to take a look at some charts that I want to show everybody that was good for me to see. So let's go a little bit more local. We're taking a look at Orange County, New York here, units sold. To me, units sold, number of houses being sold is really the mother's milk to the whole thing. And this is really good news in Orange County because it's arguably at or above where we were last year. So that's good. Things are continuing to trend in the right direction there. Average price still very strong. Price arguably continuing to increase over last year and the previous 3 to 4 years. Sold to ask ratio. This is the last asking price of the home versus what it sold for. And you can see that it's a hot market. Sellers on average are having to negotiate only about 2.5 points off of their asking price, which means that a lot of homes are going for at or above asking. And, as I talk to the Green Team agents that are out there on the ground, there seems to be even more bidding wars this year than there were last year. So that's an interesting analytic. And days on market continuing to go down, right? The lower the number here, the hotter the market. So again, pretty consistent here over the last 6 years. Days on market has trended down. Now we're going to head down into New Jersey, Sussex County, units sold. Pretty down, pretty well down consistently over the last 2 previous years, 18 and 17. But nonetheless, historically, a good number still. And I know that, when you talk to the troops on the ground in Sussex County, they're busy. They're selling homes. Average price, this has been a mixed bag, as you can see the lines crisscrossing one another for the last 6 years. Average price just hasn't really moved that much, although I think it depends on what price category you're in. We're going to hear from Karen Gonen from Green Team New Jersey Realty in a little bit about that. And ask to sold ratio, again, this is even higher in Sussex County. So in other words, sellers are having to negotiate less than 2% on average from their last asking price versus where they sell it. And days on market, again, down. So still a very solid, healthy market in Sussex County, lots of homes being sold, so on and so forth. So some housekeeping items here. We're going to do the next housing market update on June 18th at 2 p.m. Be sure to be there. You can always stay connected with us at greenteamhq.com/HMU, which stands for Housing Market Update. And a special thanks to Realty, which is a better, smarter, faster real estate referral network for agents. Thanks to those guys for always sponsoring our housing market updates. Okay, so panel, Karen, PJ, we're going to get you guys in on this. Karen, you saw the numbers, Sussex County versus Orange. Why do you think units sold continues to trend downward in Sussex County?
I think actually the 2 years prior, we had a lot of bank-owned properties. And a lot. Banks were finally releasing all the different REOs that they had in inventory. We don't really have that much left. Last year and the year before, we were actually the second county that had the most amount of units of REOs, and those were released. We don't have that much left.
Yeah.
I think that's really the issue as to why the numbers are down, is because we don't have banks releasing them.
Yeah, and you've been very consistently saying that for some time. Every month I ask you, that same question, and you're just reiterating that. So and I don't tell Karen to say that, I like to see if it's going to come every month, but just kind of as a recap for previous housing market updates that we've done, that's been Karen's response. And I think it's a good one. At first I was like, okay. And now I believe it. I think that that's pretty accurate because, when you look around the area, just take a look at the county across the border in New York State, it's a pretty different picture. So I think that there's a lot to that. And then when you look at the other stats in Sussex County, days on market, asked to sold ratio, those are very strong, so that does indicate that there's some sort of X factor going on in there. Another thing that is interesting that we talked about 2 or 3 housing market updates ago was how people are aging in place. They are not moving out of their homes and going into nursing homes or assisted living facilities, so on and so forth. They're aging in place, meaning they're staying there and getting in-home care. And I think that's definitely been a factor. We'll probably have a follow-up on that to see where those numbers compare 6 months from when we last talked about it. But I think there's also something going on there, because there really is, Karen. I think you would agree, right? I mean, every agent I talk to, the biggest problem still for the last 3 years has been inventory shortage. They have buyers, they're ready to rock and roll, but if they can't find the house they want, and they end up fizzling out and renting and, just going away because circumstances couldn't find what they wanted.
Absolutely. I think so many more people are looking to buy homes, and homes are so much more affordable because of the low interest rates with the mortgage industry, which PJ will probably go into as well. So more people are looking because, especially in our area in Vernon, you can actually buy a house and it'll be cheaper than renting. You'll be paying a mortgage instead of rent, and you can buy a house, but we don't have units coming out. And when we do have a nice house coming out, everybody goes in on it. And that's why days on market is so low, for that specific reason.
Yeah, that has been a remarkable thing now that you mention it. The rental market has, usually they have an inverse relationship, right? Like the hotter the housing market, the cooler the rental market, right? Because people want to buy versus rent. But in this case, where we are and where we've been for like the last 24 to 36 months, both markets are super hot. It's just literally, at least in our area, right? That from what I can experience. But I see trends nationwide too, because I see the amount of capital being put into rental properties, whether it be single family or multi-unit, and just sheer amount of capital going into these projects. You take a look at Blackstone, which, gobbled up thousands of single family homes during the downturn. They were very smart to do it. They were ahead of the curve. But they're not releasing those inventories. We have some of our agents work with a bank that just is not putting their properties on the market for sale, and they have no indications that they're going to do it anytime soon. They're renting everything, and so we're renting properties for that particular lender. So it's interesting how hot the rental market has been with sales as hot as they are. So it's almost like, I guess maybe it's a combination of, population increasing, maybe people for so many years not having jobs that were just out of the market altogether, living with mom and dad still, that are just coming into the market now and they want a place to live. I think there's a lot of that to be said.
Absolutely. For instance, Patrick and I actually have a client whose parents are moving. So he has to look for a place. If he were to rent, he would pay $1,500 to rent in our area, to rent a condo, rent a house, whereas him purchasing is more cost effective, and he's purchasing his own home.
Yeah.
So he's going to be in the condos, but his mortgage is cheaper than him renting, and that was never the case prior.
Yeah. And that's great news, right? Because anybody who's in the industry, at least I do, to my core, believe in real estate as a wealth building instrument. It's important for us as an industry to get more and more people into homes that they own, that they're building equity in, because it's going to set them up for the future, their families, college, the whole thing. And it's just good for the country as a whole. So that's a good thing, and hopefully more people take action on that and, sink their teeth into a home that they can buy and live in. So PJ, let's talk mortgages here real quick. unless you're muted still, unless you have something compelling, I want to jump into that one slide. Is that all right if we jump into that slide we talked about before?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so just give me 1 second to get there. And I'm sorry. Okay, here we are. So not this one here. This was curious to me. We can go back to the other one in a second, but I looked at this one and I said, this is interesting, because what it's saying to us, the headline is mortgage originations by age, right? So what one is maybe supposed to look at is these little colors and see who the borrowers are, right? Like the gray is 70 plus. It seems like the 70 plus have been pretty consistent, right? And it looks like maybe there's a little less red, which is 30 to 39, and there's a little less blue. But to me, what was astounding was just this general trend of more loans being originated in these years, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, than there are now. And just what I take from that, PJ, is subprime. I think that the reason why there were so many loans written back in these days was because there were all these subprime products, and it was just, an absolute, I'm probably not going to use the right word, but it was significantly different. There were a lot of them being written. So, and to me, I've been saying for the last few years, the one thing that could undermine this whole positive thing that's happening with our economy and our housing market is the reintroduction of all these subprime products. And I haven't seen it. I ask it every month with our lender that comes on for the panel, whether it be you or somebody else, are you seeing subprime products out there? And the most I've gotten from somebody was, yeah, they're here and there, but not prevalent. Do you agree with that?
I have to. I will say that also kind of trends along with what you were showing before, along with the debt that people are having and the amount that they can afford based off of price. Obviously, in 03, 04, the income that people were making and the average household income was significantly different, but mortgages were still being written. I think some people are starting to take more chances as far as those things go. But as a whole, I think the subprime will stay away for a little bit longer because you're dealing with tough inventory that these products don't have to come to allow people to be able to purchase what's out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the subprime should stay away forever, quite frankly. I don't see a need for it. I think even if you're doing stated loans, you get a big down payment. I mean, there's got to be skin in the game, whether it's the person's credit or it's their money, right?
And that's the same thing with any major credit situations. People are able to purchase right after foreclosures and bankruptcies. And some of these people were investors that had investment properties, 10 years ago that are having to deal with those aftermaths. But all of them are going to require significant statutory investment, 20, 30% as far as those prices go.
Yeah, and that's fine. The way that I look at that is, okay, so if you're an individual and you're confident in your business, but the lenders don't want to lend it to you because you're an independent contractor, you're not a W-2 earner, but you have substantial cash to put down, let the person roll the dice. It's their money. And you have good collateral as a lender to take the property back, and you have good money down, so everybody should be okay.
Exactly. Lenders, they don't want to take over properties, and that's why they're going to continue to restrict what they're allowed to give. And you're probably never going to see those true no doc walk into an office, say, I want to buy this house, and it happens. So.
Yeah. No, but anyway, so I kind of missed the whole point of this graph by being taken away by just the sheer volume of loans being written from 03 to 08, right? And then the massive difference in it. So this was really great for me to see. I mean, this makes me much more confident that this housing market can continue to go along at a good pace, because at the end of the day, and I've been saying this for years, ever since 10, 11, the banks have been writing very good loans. They're making money, and let's be honest, as long as the banks are willing to lend money, then the rest of us can make money. It's like we're really, beholden to them, whether we want to admit it or not. And not just us in the real estate industry, that trickles down to everybody, so, so that's good stuff. So is this, let's take a look at this slide, PJ, kind of walk us through this.
So I think the important thing to look at, and something that everyone has to consider, with age groups, or if we're calling them baby boomers, Generation X, millennials, the situation where we're looking at is everyone's now coming into student loans being the largest portion of where their debts are allotted outside of what that housing payment is. So it's important to educate people on what a bank's going to require and what they're going to see from what those debts are. You're also seeing that, the areas where we are doing business in are some of the highest, debts and what is allotted. Obviously, that has a lot to do with the income that's made off of, those persons. But the breakdown of where these costs are, looking at New Jersey, you have auto loans and credit cards in the same position, but you have student loans almost making up exactly what those debts are. And, looking at that, people are now going into it. And I think that's why it's still keeping the trend of, that 20 to 39 age group as a smaller portion than that 40 to 59 age group. So I think they kind of work together, seeing where those trends are, because a lot of us think the first time home buyer is that millennial that's just coming out of school. But I think it's that person that may have already established a family and rented for a short period and now is truly seeing that difference in renting versus buying.
Yeah. And I mean, it's interesting, right, to see how substantial the student loan debt really is. When you just zoom out and just look at this graph, it's telling, it's really telling. And I can guarantee you 30 years ago, it was a non-factor. It was like student loans. What do you mean student loans? And, and what's interesting about it, I'm not getting political here or necessarily saying who I vote for or who I don't, but I recall in a presidential debate, Ron Paul, he explained it the best way that I've ever known about how inflation really works. And he used the student loan example. He said, anytime that the government gets involved and starts to fund things or do things, that's when inflation sets in. And he used student loans as an example. He said, you just take a look. I think he had a chart up or something. Take a look at the last 30 years. This is where the student loans came in from the government, and look at what happened to the cost of, going to college for an average student. So, it's, but then where do you go from here? There's some people that have talked about a student loan bubble, on the horizon. Some of the governments, like now New York State, right, they have a situation where if you earn less than a certain amount in your household, your kid can go to college for free.
Yep.
At a SUNY school. So it's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see what happens, and maybe this scale can tip a little bit over the course of time.
And I think it's also, a trend to see what people are really out there looking for. I find the younger age demographic is not necessarily looking for that 2,000, 3,000 square foot house to move into, even if they can potentially afford it. I see a lot of people being more mindful of their income and keeping themselves under where they're actually able to. And that's affecting those percentages of that debt that's being used as well.
Yeah, I would say, Karen, just to bring you back into the discussion a little bit, I definitely see a trend. We talk to builders, developers, so on and so forth, and the trend seems to be smaller, more efficient, less taxes, people, it almost seems like, people are becoming more and more frugal as time goes on. Is that fair to say, Karen? Or?
Absolutely. So I have quite a few buyers that were currently under contract where they could afford a lot more, but they specifically said to me, I am approved for 400, but I'm looking for 250. That's where I'm comfortable. And I've actually made that part of my discussion when we first started out, and I said, call your mortgage guy, see where you're comfortable being. So let's say, even though you're approved for the 300-400, where do you want to be? And that's where we look. And they do look, except for a very small amount of people, they do look for the smaller homes, the ones that are more efficient. Solar panels are awesome. They're not looking for the big, humongous homes where we're looking at 3,000-4,000 square feet per home. They're looking for smaller ones.
Yeah, it's all very interesting. Okay. Any final points by anybody? We're 26 minutes in. I always want to get this done within 30 minutes. Any final points, PJ, you'd like to make?
I think just touching on interest rates, I think they're going to stay right around exactly where your scale is. So, I would say there's probably a possibility of a slight uptick with a continued strong housing market. And, it's probably going to settle down by the end of the year. And who knows how long it's going to stay, but I don't see anything drastic happening anytime soon.
Yeah, that's good news. Karen, any last thoughts?
The only thing I actually wanted to add is that the banks are now flipping homes themselves. And so we're looking at a lot of houses that perhaps possibly flippers or investors would be buying and flipping. The banks are doing that themselves. So
are they at least hiring a realtor to help them flip the house?
No, they're not.
They're cutting everybody out, huh?
That's just something else to keep in mind. We have quite a few houses that the banks have flipped. They're not that great because contractors are competing for them and the bank is trying to keep their costs low. But I'm sure all my fellow realtors are doing a great job at recommending the right inspectors so that the buyers are aware of what they're buying.
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Okay, well, special thanks to PJ Keelan from Family First Funding. PJ,
thank you for having me.
How does one get a hold of you if they want to get a mortgage?
So cell phone number is 973-570-2094. I'm Jersey born and raised, but my office is in Warwick. Warwick are literally probably away from you guys. So, and then 845-669-0974 is the office number. So.
Okay, very good. And Karen Gonin from Green Team New Jersey Realty. Karen, how does someone get a hold of you if they want to list or sell a home, list or buy a home?
All they have to do is reach out to me on my cell phone at 551-262-4062. Anywhere on social media, you can look me up, or at the office at 973-814.
7030-44.
Yeah, I had a great
All right. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. And don't forget, next month, I believe the date is June 18th. It's a Tuesday for the next housing market update. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Take care, guys.